Thank you all for joining us. We'll just wait a moment for more people to come in. We will start momentarily. Thank you for your patience. Okay, we're going to get started. We want to welcome everyone who's here and those who will be joining us momentarily. As a reminder, and as you can see on the screen, the session is being recorded. Next slide. We have a Q&A feature. If you can locate that at the bottom of your screen, this is a question and answer feature. We're asking you to pose your questions, type your questions using this feature, and we will try our best to answer all of your questions. We have a team of wonderful people ready to take on your questions. And we also have a few folks whose skills are to speak and write and listen in Vietnamese, in Mandarin, and in Portuguese. So if these are your preferred languages, feel free to type your questions in either one of those languages, Vietnamese, Mandarin, or Portuguese, and we have folks who will be able to answer them right back to you. Please don't share any personal information as well during the Q&A channel. Next slide. We're looking forward to spending some time with you today. This is day 3 of International Parent and Family Orientation. We are joined today by our friends and partners, Pauline and Jenna, who will talk to you about working on campus, the services and the resources that are available for your student who's interested in working at UC San Diego. We'll have more information as well about the topic as we go along with what we have to share. Before we get started, I just want to know who's in the room. We have a few folks joining us and a few more continuing to join us. So at the bottom of your screen, there's a hand. It's the raise your hand feature. And I have 4 questions. So just so we know who our audience is. So raise your hand or click the raise hand feature. If you feel like your student is interested, if your student is studying from home this fall, if your student is at home taking classes, raise your hand. All right, number keeps rising, 22, 23. All right, go ahead and unraise your hand. Okay, so raise your hand now if your student is on campus this fall quarter. Just a few. I think that's it. Okay, just a few. All right, go ahead and unraise your hand. All right. And then the next question, raise your hand if your student is interested in working on campus their first year at UC San Diego. Cool. All right. Keeps rising. All right. 17, 18. Okay. All right. Go ahead and unraise your hand. Okay, go ahead. Raise your hand if you're just not unsure if your student wants to work on campus while going to college. So you're just pretty much here just to gain some information. All right, great. Thank you for sharing. Go ahead and unraise your hand. All right, again, welcome to the session. I'm going to pass it along to my colleague, Pauline, who will kick us off on the topic of working on campus as an international student. Pauline, next slide, please.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you, Karina, for that introduction. I'd like to say hello first to our parents and families and newly admitted fall 2020 Tritons. I'm so happy to join you all today from the International Students and Programs Office, also known as ISPO, here at UC San Diego. The purpose of today's session, of course, is to discuss work authorization for our international students before and after graduation. And then, of course, my colleague Jenna Rock will be joining me later today to also explain some search tips for on-campus and off-campus employment and so forth for international students during their program. Next slide, please. Okay, so international students in F1 and J1 status are eligible for various types of employment during their studies here in the US. Now, there are different types of employment authorization, and we differentiate them between the types that you can do during your program and then also those that you can do after your program. The main purpose, of course, of an international student is to study full-time and pursue normal progress towards their academic program here in the US. However, there are benefits of employment under both the F1 as well as the J1 visa. And so we'll talk about those specific types of employment for both visa types. Now, I hope that you all have also registered for the Know the Rules, basically the regulations that international students need to follow while they're here in the US to maintain their student status. That session does go over what regulations they need to be aware of. And if they are following all of those rules and maintaining their status here, they would then be eligible for employment. So go ahead, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so before an international student begins any type of employment here in the US, we always encourage them to first know what kind of authorization do you need? What kind of work permission do you need so that you can engage in that employment opportunity legally while here in the US? So just to share some types of authorization that, that students might apply for. Some are what's called incidental to status. So some types of employment, as long as they're here maintaining their F1 and J1 status, they are eligible to partake in those types of employment opportunities without any permission from our office or the US government. There are also some types of employment opportunities that first require authorization from our office, from the International Students and Programs Office. And that might be reflected on the second page of their Form I-20 or the first page of their DS 2019 if they're J1 students. So we'll add some sort of notation on their document that shows they're eligible to engage in employment. Another type of employment authorization might be by the US government. So from the US Citizenship and Immigration Service, otherwise known as USCIS, they might need to send the student a specific type of document allowing them to work. So as you can see, the types of levels of permission do differ, and it's important as students engage in employment and start looking and preparing to work on or off campus, that they first understand which one they might need. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I want to give you all a timeline of what a typical student's work looks like here at UC San Diego. So generally, students will arrive on campus in the fall quarter. And once you arrive on campus, you are immediately eligible for on-campus employment. And we'll talk about what is considered on-campus employment for international students. In order to be eligible for off-campus employment, generally students are required to complete at least one academic year, which is 3 quarters on the same CVIS ID number here in active status. And what that basically means is they need to be physically present in the US for 3 quarters before they can start off-campus employment. And then finally, after the student completes their program of study, they may be eligible for post-completion training or a period of time after they graduate to pursue practical training after their program ends and get more work experience in their field. So we'll talk about on-campus, off-campus, as well as working after graduation. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first type of work authorization that students can engage in during their program is on-campus employment. So on-campus employment differs for F1 students who have a Form I-20 and those J1 students who have a Form DS 2019. Our F1 students, if you have a Form I-20, you do not need any type of permission to work on campus, okay? As long as you're following the rules and regulations under the F1 visa category, you are eligible to pursue on-campus employment opportunities. Some examples of on-campus employment opportunities are working in UC San Diego's bookstore, perhaps the Price Center on campus. You can also do research in some of our labs and so forth. So those are some examples of on-campus employment. On-campus employment does not need to be related to a student's major. So for example, a student can work at the UCSD bookstore, right? And I doubt any of their majors are, you know, books or making books or selling books and so forth. So just know on-campus employment is a type of authorization international students can engage in. It does not need to be related to their program of study. Again, F1 students do not need permission. Our J1 students, so those who hold a Form DS 2019, they do need a permission letter first from our office in order to engage in on-campus employment. So that's on-campus employment. So now let's take a look at off-campus employment, which is the second type of authorization students can can apply for during their program. Now our F1 students who want to apply for off-campus work authorization, this is referred to as curricular practical training, or CPT. So a lot of our students will hear this acronym throughout their program, CPT. Just know we're referring to off-campus employment during the student's program of study. Unlike on-campus employment, off-campus employment must be directly related to a student's program of study. So if they are an economics major, then the work that they do off-campus, whether it be an internship or some form of employment, must be directly related to economics. Okay, so that's the main difference there. Also, the students should be receiving credit for this internship that they're doing, and they also need to gain prior authorization from our office in order to engage in off-campus employment. The eligibility terms are the same for our J1 students who have a Form DS 2019. So you will also need to ensure that your employment is related to your program of study, you receive credit, you gain authorization from our office, but your training for J1 students is referred to as pre-completion academic training, otherwise known as AT. Okay, so on-campus and off-campus employment during your program of study, these are the two primary types that students will apply for, and they can always visit our office to learn more about what type of authorization they might need. Sometimes they're not sure. Okay, next slide. Okay, and I'd like to all remind you again, if you have any questions, please submit them through the Q&A chat. Okay, so we've talked about working during your program. So now your student has finally reached the finish line, they've graduated, and they're getting ready to plan what is next. What should I do now after graduation? Many of our international students will decide to stay here in the US to engage in post-completion training, otherwise known as work after graduation, after they've completed their program of study. The timeline is key here and when students apply for this benefit, and our office will help guide students throughout their program and remind them as well. You know, you're nearing the end of your program, it's time to think about what to do next. So we will help students in understanding their timeline to work after graduation. For our F1 students, the work authorization after they complete their program of study is known as optional practical training, or OPT. Okay, this is a period of up to 12 months of authorization that the student can engage in after they've completed their classes and their coursework. They can remain in the US. It's an extension of their F1 status here. And if you are a STEM major, you are eligible for a 24-month extension in addition to the 12 months. Unlike CPT, which students engage in during their program of study, OPT is recommended by our office, but they ultimately will get the final approval from US Immigration in the form of an employment authorization document. So that process also we advise students on thoroughly so that they can gain that work authorization and that they need to work after graduation. For our J1 students, the length of their academic training varies depending on the length of their program. And unlike OPT for our F1 students, academic training for our J1 students is authorized by ISPO, by our office, not by US Immigration. And I'm well aware we're talking about a lot of terms and acronyms, and this is heavier regulation talk discussion. So we always encourage students to come and talk to our office or visit the vanity link iwork.ucsd.edu to learn more about these types of employment. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So I just want to introduce a little bit more about our office and what we do. We have over 20 friendly advisors, administrative staff, and student assistants who are ready to help our international students. We advise them on understanding their immigration status first and foremost, but also employment benefits, traveling and re-entering in the US, also academic adjustment and helping them navigate campus life. For our families and our students who are outside of the US this fall quarter, ISPO is planning to host a second set of orientation sessions to help you really acclimate to on-campus instruction and just the travel piece once you prepare to travel and enter, hopefully when conditions improve in the winter quarter. In addition to advising, we also do programming. So this is hosting events and ways to help students acclimate to campus life and prioritize their student health and safety and so forth while meeting new students. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and I also wanted to share your support system while you're here as an international student at UC San Diego. So aside from our office, from the International Students and Programs Office, who help you to understand the regulatory piece of working, when it's time for you to start seeking looking for engagement and employment opportunities, we have our friends at the Career Center. We'll be hearing from Jenna Rock from the Career Center in just a minute here. They're a great resource to start when you want to start looking for off-campus and on-campus opportunities. You also have your department, or if you're an undergraduate student, your college, who can really help you with the timeline of when you are going to expect to complete your program of study here at UC San Diego, so you can plan for these types of employment opportunities. You also have UC San Diego's rich network of faculty and alumni who've already paved such a great way for our international Tritons here at UC San Diego. So there's a great support system that your students have here at UC San Diego. And again, please visit iwork.ucsd.edu to learn more about those employment opportunities that we covered today. Okay, so I think let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so I can go ahead and I can introduce now our friend at the Career Center, Jenna Rock, Associate Director of Industry Engagement and Career Coach.
I almost started talking on my mute. I'm learning on that, so sorry about that. Hello, everyone. My name is Jenna Rock. I am the Associate Director for Industry Engagement and Career Coach over at Career Services. I work very closely with international students for one-on-one advising, career coaching, as well as very closely with employers who are looking to hire international students for domestic positions, as well as positions all around the world. So lots of companies who are looking to hire internationally. And it's my pleasure to be able to speak with them to find ways to increase engagement of employers and you all. So I'd like to just take a moment to, first of all, thank you so much, Pauline. Pauline and I work very closely together. She went over a lot of the logistics and pieces that come with visa status and applications and making sure that you're on the right track. So ISPO and Career Services has a very tight partnership in that way. And one of the areas that we definitely lean on is the information that Pauline has shared. So thank you so much for covering all of that. I would say that one of the pieces they lean on for us is the career coaching aspect and actually navigating the job search, navigating the marketplace that you all are interested in transitioning into, whether it be a volunteer position, an internship, or permanent employment outside of graduation. So just to give you an orientation of what Career Services is and what Career Services really has to offer, we use the word advising loosely. I like to actually refer to it as coaching, but we talk about various topics and categories as it relates to prepping your student, your child, your son or daughter for the job and internship search, resume and cover letter review, career exploration, elevator pitch and interviewing strategies. And this is just to name a few. We can go deep and talk about career exploration. We can talk about events and recommend events that we hold that we would love for your student, your child to attend as it relates to their career goals. And which brings me into programming. So the other part of the Career Services House that we love to offer is ways to engage your son or daughter with employers. And so we speak to employers directly to involve them, engage them in various opportunities, including career fairs, which we have gone mostly virtual for the fall of 2020. That has to do with COVID changes and shifting and pivoting. Before that, we would do face-to-face, and so we'll reanalyze that for the future. I do like to mention that here, though, because it seems like a lot of you had your hands up for your student doing classes remotely. So I wanted to just make sure to put that out there. It is accessible. Usually we have 4 large fairs in the fall quarter, and this year I think we have about 9. So we're increasing the opportunities and minimizing that student to employer ratio to get that more intimate feel for these virtual settings. In addition to that, we have what's called information sessions. Employers love to speak to students about who they are, what their company culture is, and it's a great way for us to make sure that companies are face-to-face with the type of student or potential early talent that they're looking for. So a lot of times if they're looking for a specific, somebody in engineering, they'll reach out to our engineering associate director to hold that programming. So lots of different information sessions that will come your way. Fall is a very busy time, a heavy time for employers to recruit now for the upcoming spring timeline. So look out for those. We encourage you to look out for those, and I'll talk more about where you can find these opportunities. In addition to that, we of course have professional development workshops, professional development webinars, lots of ways for students to engage with each other, peer-to-peer, as well as peer to or student to coach, so that we can, take that time aside from the employers and speak about ways that we can prime and prep ourselves to be the best candidate for the employer. So in addition to that, we also have academic or industry specific events. I mentioned that a little bit previously, but typically the ones that you will see surfacing, and if it applies to you and your major, I would keep your ears perked for these type of events, including micro fairs and hackathons. Those are very busy and very popular and great ways to really put your experience to work and on display for employers. So I mentioned about where to find these opportunities. And with that, I of course have to share our Career Center resources that I want to make sure that you are aware of as the fall quarter begins. I know that Career Services tends to be very program heavy in the fall 2020 year, and that's again due to the recruitment pipeline that employers tend to work on when they're recruiting university students from a university. All of the opportunities that I just mentioned under the programming and under the advising can be found on our Handshake portal. We call it Handshake. It's our way to introduce students and employers all in the same platform and all in the same place. In addition to that, you will find job postings, international job postings, international internships, domestic opportunities, job postings, domestic internships, volunteer opportunities. The list goes on, and I wish I checked the number of postings that we had this morning. I like to do that before presentations to give people an idea, but it's definitely in the thousands. Lots of opportunities out there, and we encourage your students to check often. So definitely take a look on Handshake for those opportunities, as well as these other areas, including Going Global, Big Interview, and Triton Career Boost. These three specifically I wanted to highlight to you all, just to show that Going Global is not only a place to find international jobs and international internships, it's also a place to learn about if you are applying for jobs in other areas of the world, what does that job search look like? What does a resume look like if you're applying to a position that's outside of the US? And so it's a one-stop shop for international connections to international jobs and international internships. The other thing I like to point out is Big Interview. I know that one of my biggest things, I can't coin this for myself, but one of the things I love to say to students when they're wanting to meet with me for a mock interview is make sure your first interview is not for an actual job offer or for an actual job opportunity. You definitely want your first interview to be a one-on-one, a mock interview. And what Big Interview allows us to be able to do is create and simulate an interview practice for anything related to, if you're looking for a specific question to answer, you want to work on tell me about yourself question, you can go ahead and do that. If you simply just want to say, I want to answer questions related to computer science, you can go ahead and do that. And the portal really prompts you through that whole experience. It records your answers and it gives you the opportunity to see it, which can be some of the scariest parts. Seeing your recording back at you, and not only that, but being able to share it with a peer or with a career coach to get additional feedback about your performance. So definitely take advantage of that. It is an on-demand access and available to you through Handshake. The other piece that I like to mention for Handshake is Triton Career Boost. So like we have workshops and professional development webinars, we also have our Triton Career Boost series. If you check on Handshake, you'll notice a series of different professional development topics, and our staff has come together to create this content for you on demand, and it's only accessible through Handshake. So take a look there, and if you see anything or if you want to type in to filter out Triton Career Boost, just so you can kind of become refreshed with, what are some good strategies that I need to work on when it comes to interviewing, it will be right there for you. And in addition to that, there's other academic and industry specific tools. So each one of you is coming on with a major, pursuing a degree. And with that, the portal has already recognized some tools that may be useful for you. This is probably most prevalent for graduate students and PhD. However, depending on your area of study, you may have an additional resource that is specific to your area. So definitely check that out. And my last resource that I love to tell everybody about, our Triton Career Guide and Roadmap. This is our place and our space to go through it all. We talk from the beginning to the very end of the job search and what it means to set yourself up for success when it comes to searching for a job after any job, any position, any internship. So we highly advise folks to take a look there. And if they haven't already, it's likely we'll bring it up in our one-on-one session as well. To help you, I'm hoping that that QR code works for you all, but to help you become oriented of where to find all this information, please take a look. You can do the QR code now. You can take a picture. I welcome you to take a picture and use it on your own time. And know that we are just a touch away on your phone, even with these opportunities. And you'll likely hear Handshake used a lot in those moments where you have touch points with the Career Center. And some final tidbits and pieces that I like to be able to share with students as early as possible is more the college experience provides so many opportunities, so many opportunities. We love to see when students fully utilize all that's available to them. I will say that if one student utilized every single resource and every single opportunity that is available to them, they would be awake all hours of the day and night and so busy. So helping them to determine what is it that they're interested in, what is it that they want to get involved in. I like to stress this, especially early on for students, just because I've seen the student that ends their 4th year, they're in their final quarter, and they're ready to job search, and they say, I wish I got more experience, I wish I got more involved. I wish I knew the job market better. I didn't know that this is something that I wanted to go into, and now I'm here and I don't really like this major. And then, and in addition to that, knowing that it's not only the academic, it's not only what you get involved in, but it's also knowing the market that really sets you apart for that top candidate at the end of the day. So a couple of suggestions that I like to share early on just for students to consider is join student organizations or other extracurriculars that speak to the students' interests. Attend employer events, get in front of employers, understand what it is that they're looking for. Career fairs can be scary, but it's definitely a great place and a space to get comfortable with yourself and make sure that you're exposing yourself with what that recruitment process really looks like. For a lot of employers, career fairs tend to be the highest interest for recruiting students. And so for students to find their comfort in that space is very pivotal in my opinion, just so that they can know like, okay, what questions do I ask? I'm in a common space with them and we can communicate and collaborate. And so I also like to share with folks that it's never too early to go to a career fair. Even in your first quarter on campus, it's a great time to get acquainted with that space so that the second time is less scary. And then I also have, and then in addition to that, we do have some really great videos from international students who have shared their experience with the job search and the importance of networking. So I highly recommend you take a look at that link and see what our graduated students have to say. And that final piece of just knowing what it takes to do the job well. Get to know the job market that you're looking for and that you're looking to find that first destination after graduation. And I think one of the hidden gems or the hidden pieces outside of getting in front of employers, outside of going to the professional development workshops, it's additionally this hidden gem of San Diego has almost 200,000 alumni, and they have in that group of people that your students will, your children will have direct access to upon graduation. You know, they've been there, they've been exactly where your child, your son or daughter has been, and they're 5, 10, 20 years down the line. They love to share their stories, and they welcome opportunities to connect with students if they have questions about their area. So that is the other piece. And I know that LinkedIn is a great place and a great space to make those connections, as well as once you graduate, you'll be invited to Triton's Connect. And Triton's Connect is another great place to be able to enter a space where it's communications and collaboration among alumni from first year out of grad school, out of their undergraduate studies or graduate studies, all the way through their seasoned professional years. And I believe that concludes my portion. I thank you all so much for hearing me out a little bit. And I'm gonna bring Karina back to follow up with the question and answer session. Thanks, Karina.
Jenna and Pauline, so much great information. And yeah, we're gonna pause a little bit and answer some of the questions that came through the Q&A channel. These are probably for both of you. So there's a question, I think it's pretty well connected. It says, what if I do not have an F1 or J visa, can I still be employed? And I believe this other question is also connected to it, so I'll mention this one as well. What about my student who still uses H4 visa to study in the US? Can she work on campus and off campus?
Okay, so I can go ahead and I can answer the first half of that, Jenna. So as an F1 student, can I work on campus, or if I do not hold F1 status or J1 status, can I work on or off campus? Okay, so if you don't hold an F1 or a J1 visa type, then depending on your location or your current non-immigrant status, there might be different or different tax implications or labor laws that you need to consider. So if you're not in F1 or J1 status, you're not physically in the US holding status, when seeking employment, you may be eligible, but you should be transparent with your employer. Let them know that you're not here in the US, you don't hold F1 or J1 status, and they can best advise you on what the legalities are in accepting that type of employment with their company. So yes, it could be possible if you're outside of the US this fall quarter, haven't yet entered in the US in F1 or J1 status, but to just work directly and be transparent with your employer. We do encourage students, of course, to, if they'd like to get some experience, you know, while they're back home. And I think, Jenna, you might be able to provide more information about how they might be able to look for those opportunities while they're home this fall.
Your mic is off, Jenna.
Karina, I wanted to make sure I didn't miss the second part of that question. Was it what you just said, Pauline? Finding opportunities while they're home? Okay. Yes. So that is a great question. And I will say that we are, as much as I've heard it and have a hard time repeating it, we are in unprecedented times, and we are moving forward with kind of a non-traditional approach. And I say non-traditional in the sense that this is probably not the way I would have answered this question last year, but this year, due to the unprecedented times, we are, you know, it may be possible, and it may be possible to work remotely. And basically what students who may be interested in doing remote work from home, whether it's inside of the US or outside of the US, is to just discuss the feasibility with the hiring department and let them know where your current situation is. And this by and large has to do with the way that you would be paid. And so there's we've transitioned to a new system for payment, and we have and transitioned some of the different pieces involved for being able to give a check. It's not as simple anymore. So that's why I say it may be possible, and we highly advise students to consider opportunities. Absolutely. On Handshake, there will be on Handshake if they're on campus. And if it's clear that it's remote, you can definitely pose that question. If it's not clear that it's remote, you can pose the question, hey, are you open for remote positions, or is this solely on campus? And then the next question from there would be, you know, just notifying and discussing the feasibility of your current geographical location, I guess, because inside of the US or outside of the US might provide a different situation from department to department. That was a great question. Thank you.
I don't know if you can expand on this, but this one question is specifically on H-4 visa, the ability to work off campus.
Okay, so H-4 dependents who are children of H-1B visa holders usually are not eligible for employment under the H-4 visa type. However, ISPO does not usually advise on visa categories outside of the F1 and the J1 international student visa. So we would refer those non-immigrant students in H-4 status to either follow up with an immigration attorney directly to ensure that you understand the correct type of employment authorization you might need, or to also visit U.S. Immigration's website at uscis.gov. Oh, Karina, you're muted.
We have a question in the chat that says, as an F1 student, can I only work on something related to my major off campus? Why is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our F1 and our J1 visa categories, right? The main purpose of our international students while they're here in the US is to make normal progress during their program of study. In terms of work authorization, which is a benefit of the F1 and the J1 visa category, it's referred to as curricular practical training or optional practical training. And the practical training component of that really is to gain a better understanding outside of the classroom in that specific field of study, in that major of study. So yeah, on-campus employment, again, does not need to be related to their program of study. So they're able to gain training and work experience that way. But for anything off campus, they need to ensure it is directly related to their program of study. That's a great question. Thank you.
The other question that we have is connected to tax, and you mentioned a little bit about that earlier. What is the tax implications for income earned through work CSD? Where to file tax returns, federal or hiring of the country?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. ISPO does not, we are not tax professionals. I know that we can refer our students who do seek employment opportunities in the US based on their visa type to those resources once they're here. At this time, we do not advise for any tax questions, but we can provide resources. So students can email us directly at istudents@ucsc.edu to gain more information on tax help.
And then one last question before we head off. What are your recommendations for someone wanting to work their first year at UC San Diego? Is this a recommendation? How do you feel enhance their college experience at the beginning of the journey?
I can definitely take that question. And Pauline, if you want to chime in, go for it. I really, when I get this question, and I get it a lot, it really, really, really depends on each individual person. Does it happen? Absolutely. I've seen it happen many times over and over again. Is it recommended? I can't answer that necessarily. The piece that I would definitely put back is know your strengths, know what you can handle, and if it's kind of like a yellow light for you, you want to proceed with caution on, I don't know if I should or I don't know if I shouldn't. My biggest recommendation for that type of student is take a quarter, see what your workload feels like, get acquainted with campus, and try again for the winter quarter. So you can definitely, I'm not discouraging folks from going for it. And I have high achieving students who are ready to hit the ground running with both the role as a student and a student worker. So don't let me get in the way for that. But yeah, I would just say, is it recommended? That's for you to determine if it's something where are your strengths and where do they lie. One thing based on that information or based on that topic, we do have how to find a job on campus for international students. It's a webinar. It will take place on Wednesday next week. Wednesday, September 30th. And that will take place from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. I'm not typing this in, but if I could get some support on that from my colleagues, that'd be wonderful. It is hosted by the Student Employment Office, and it's the International Students How to Find a Job on Campus. This information, I just found out about it, hot off the press. It's not even on Handshake yet, but take a look at later this week and you'll see it posted and confirmed on Wednesday, September 30th from 2 o'clock to 2:30 p.m. And that's Pacific time. And you'll be able to talk directly with the Student Employment Office about those type of questions as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, there's a wealth of information.
All right, I think Karina may have dropped off. So if we want to go to the next slide, I can wrap up for us.
Wonderful. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, so just like the recordings we've had all week, this recording is going to be posted onto our YouTube channel. And I just wanted to point out that if you would like to go back and watch this with subtitles in a different language, these are the instructions on how to do that by selecting the options under the subtitles and selecting auto translate and picking the preferred language. Next slide, please. So I know that this is currently day 3 of International Parent and Family Orientation, when we have the last day tomorrow. So not only do we have another session coming up here in just about 10 minutes, finding and utilizing academic support services, but we have 2 sessions that will end our program tomorrow, prioritizing your students' health and safety, and then our student panel on being a UC San Diego International student. You can find more information at our website, parents.ucsd.edu. Next slide, please, Jenna. And last but not least, we have Homecoming at Home, which is going to be an all UC San Diego community event happening October 19th through the 25th. Our office will be putting on about 5 different sessions throughout the week, and registration is currently open, and you can find more information about that at parents.ucsd.edu as well. But please, we hope to see you not only at the rest of the sessions we have for international and parent and family programs, but also at Homecoming in October. Thank you all for attending. For those joining us in the session coming up at 5, we will see you in a few minutes. And thank you to our panelists and everyone helping out today. Thank you.